He thought he'd just bought a broken ranch for $1, a forgotten piece of land lost to time. But when he pushed open that creaking front door, he wasn't alone. A black woman stood in the shadows, barefoot, holding an old lantern. Her first words chilled him. "You're not supposed to be here." What they discovered next changed everything. Subscribe. You won't believe this story. The wind carried the scent of dust and rain as Ethan's truck crawled along the forgotten road. The horizon stretched endlessly, golden fields meeting a bruised sky. In the passenger seat lay a single envelope, a deed for land that no one else wanted. A ranch for $1. It sounded like a joke, or maybe a trap, but Ethan wasn't afraid of losing money. He was afraid of losing himself. Life had worn him thin. A marriage that had ended with silence instead of shouting. A job that drained more than it paid. Friends who stopped calling when he stopped pretending to be okay. So when he saw the ad, abandoned property, $1, buyer must collect in person, he took it as a sign. A fresh start. Something that didn't ask for explanations. The road narrowed, swallowed by tall grass. His GPS died 5 miles back, but he kept driving until a rusted gate appeared. The sign hanging crooked read Harper Hills. The paint had peeled, but the name still had weight. He cut the engine, and for the first time in years he heard absolute silence. Not city hum, not phone buzz, just wind brushing across memory. Ethan pushed open the gate. The metal moaned like it hadn't been touched in decades. Ahead stood a 2-story house, its roof sagging under age, but still proud. Wild vines climbed the porch. The windows stared back like old eyes that had seen too much. He hesitated at the front door, key trembling between his fingers. $1 for this? It felt wrong, yet right, like fate had whispered his name here. He turned the key. The lock groaned, wood shifted, and the door opened to darkness. The smell hit him first, dust, wood, and faint traces of smoke, as if someone had left a fire burning years ago. He stepped inside. The floor creaked under his boots. The walls were lined with photographs, their faces faded by time. And then, a sound, footsteps, soft, deliberate. He froze. At the end of the hall, half hidden in shadow, a lantern flickered to life. Its light revealed a woman, a black woman, barefoot, wrapped in a simple linen dress. Her hair caught the glow like strands of gold in the dark. She didn't flinch, didn't scream. She only looked at him with calm, unreadable eyes. "You're not supposed to be here," she whispered. Ethan's breath caught. I just bought this place. I didn't know anyone." Her expression didn't change. "Bought?" She echoed softly, as if the word itself was foreign. "You can't buy what still belongs to the land." The lantern shook slightly in her hand, but her voice stayed steady. "Leave before the storm comes." He wanted to ask 100 questions. "Who are you? Why are you here? What storm?" But something in her tone silenced him. She turned and walked deeper into the house, her light fading down the corridor until only darkness remained. Ethan stood there, heart hammering. The silence returned, thicker now, heavier. The house seemed to breathe around him. Somewhere above, a door slammed on its own. He whispered to himself, "What did I just walk into?" Outside, thunder rolled across the fields. The first drops of rain hit the porch roof like impatient fingers. Ethan stepped back onto the veranda, staring at the land stretching before him. Lightning flashed, illuminating the hills, and for a split second he thought he saw a figure standing among the trees, watching. Maybe the county clerk had been right. Maybe ghosts did live here. But something deeper told him to stay. He tightened his coat, whispered, "Just one night," and went back inside. The door closed with a slow, echoing thud, sealing the past and the future under one roof. The morning came quietly, as if even the sun was hesitant to touch this place. Ethan woke on the old couch, wrapped in a blanket that wasn't his. Someone had covered him during the night. He sat up, confused, and the memory of the woman flickered back, her calm voice, her lantern, her warning. The smell of something warm drifted from the kitchen. He followed it cautiously. There she was, stirring a pot over a small gas flame, her back straight, movements graceful. "You're still here," she said without turning. "So are you," he replied, trying to sound braver than he felt. She didn't answer. She simply ladled the soup into a bowl and placed it on the table. "Eat." The road takes more from you than you think." Her name, he would soon learn, was Amara. She had lived here for years, maybe longer. Time seemed slippery when she spoke. The ranch, she explained, had once belonged to her grandmother's employers, a wealthy family who left during a drought decades ago. Amara had stayed behind. "This house still remembers them," she said softly. "Someone has to keep it breathing." Ethan listened, though part of him didn't understand. "Keep it breathing?" he asked. Amara looked up for the first time, her dark eyes reflecting both pain and peace. "This land," she said, touching the table's worn wood, "was built on promises, some broken, some forgotten. But when people forget love, the land forgets how to live. I can't let that happen." Her words made him uneasy, but also curious. He spent the day exploring while she worked quietly in the garden. Dust covered everything, yet nothing felt abandoned. Someone had kept this place alive, her. By evening, rain began again. Thunder rolled, echoing like old voices through the hills. Ethan found Amara outside, barefoot in the mud, planting small white flowers despite the storm. "You'll get sick," he called out. She smiled faintly. "I can't. The rain doesn't hurt me. It listens." He didn't know why, but watching her made something in him soften. Maybe it was her calm defiance. Maybe it was how she spoke to the wind like an old friend. For the first time in months, Ethan wasn't thinking about failure or loss. He was simply there, watching life still fight to bloom. Later that night, lightning illuminated the photographs on the walls. He noticed one he hadn't seen before, a small frame half buried in dust. A young black girl stood in front of the house, holding a lantern, smiling shyly beside an older woman. Ethan turned to ask Amara who they were, but she was gone. He called her name. Silence. He searched each room until he found a door slightly open at the end of the hall. Inside was an old bedroom, neatly kept, with faded curtains and a single candle burning on the dresser. Next to it lay a journal. He hesitated, then opened it. The handwriting was elegant but trembling. The first line read, "If someone ever comes, tell them I stayed to forgive what time forgot." Before he could read further, a voice behind him said quietly, "You shouldn't open that." He turned. Amara stood in the doorway, her face unreadable. I'm sorry," he stammered. "It's not about sorry," she interrupted softly. "It's about what's ready to be remembered." Her words hung heavy in the air. For the first time, Ethan saw something fragile in her. Grief buried under grace. The candle flickered, and she added, almost whispering, "You came here for a reason? Ethan, the land doesn't choose by accident." Then she blew out the candle, leaving him in darkness lit only by thunder outside. The night felt heavier after Amara's words. Ethan couldn't shake the echo of her voice. The land doesn't choose by accident. He sat awake on the couch, the journal still resting on his lap. Rain drummed against the windows, each drop like a heartbeat in the dark. He told himself to put it away, to respect her privacy. But something inside urged him to read. The first pages were dates, old ones. 1975, 1978. The ink had faded, but the emotion hadn't. The words carried life, loss, and love. The Harpers left today. Said the drought took everything. They left the house, the fields, and me. But this land raised me too. I'll stay until it learns how to breathe again. Ethan exhaled slowly. The handwriting wasn't Amara's. It must have been her grandmother's. But the more he read, the more he felt like these pages were speaking directly to him. Sometimes the land listens better than people. It holds pain, but it also forgives. The question is, do we? Thunder cracked overhead, and for a moment Ethan thought he heard footsteps. He turned, but no one was there. Still, the air felt alive, charged, aware. He read on. If someone ever finds this place, tell them the truth. This house isn't haunted by ghosts. It's haunted by promises. He looked up. The shadows seemed to stretch closer around him, whispering, "Promises? What promises?" Suddenly, a floorboard creaked behind him. He turned, and there she was. Amara stood in the doorway, rain dripping from her hair, her expression unreadable. "You opened it," she said softly. "I had to," Ethan admitted. It felt like it was written for me." She walked closer, her bare feet silent against the floor. "It was written for whoever was willing to listen," she replied. "Most people don't listen anymore." Her eyes dropped to the journal, and her voice softened. "That's my grandmother's heart you're holding," Ethan nodded. "She sounds like she loved this place." Amara smiled faintly. "She did, even when it hurt her." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ethan asked, "Why did you stay, Amara? You could have left, started over." She looked out the window at the rain, her face lit by lightning. "Because some pain doesn't leave you until you face it. My grandmother said every wound is just love waiting to be understood, so I stayed to understand." Her words sank deep into him. He thought about his own life, the failures, the loneliness, the constant running. Maybe that's what he'd been doing too, trying to escape pain instead of understanding it. Amara stood and walked toward the stairs. "You should rest," she said gently. "Tomorrow I'll show you what the land remembers." Before she disappeared up the steps, she turned back, with eyes that seemed to see through him. "But be ready, Ethan. The truth isn't always kind." When she was gone, he opened the journal one last time. Tucked between 2 pages was a photograph, a young Amara as a child standing beside a man holding a shovel. The back read, "Planting Forgiveness." He stared at it for a long time, trying to understand. Lightning flashed again, and this time, just for a second, he saw the reflection of someone else in the window. A man's figure, faint, standing behind him. When he turned, there was no one, but the smell of soil filled the air, fresh, damp, like the earth had just been turned over. He looked down at the journal again. The last line on the page read, "When the ground remembers, it reveals what was buried." Ethan's pulse quickened. He didn't know if it was fear or purpose, but one thing was certain. He wasn't leaving, not until he found out what this land was trying to say. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the world felt washed new. The ranch shimmered under a quiet sun, mist rising like ghosts returning to heaven. Ethan stepped outside to find Amara kneeling in the garden, her hands deep in the soil. She didn't look up when he approached. "The ground talks more after rain," she said. He smiled faintly. "And what's it saying today?" "That it's ready," she whispered. They spent hours walking the land together. Amara spoke little, but when she did, her words carried weight. She showed him an old oak tree split by lightning, and how, years later, it had healed around the wound. "That's what time does when love is patient," she said. Ethan followed her through the fields until they reached a small patch of earth marked by stones. At first, he thought it was just a broken fence line, until he noticed the carvings, names, dates, a family. He knelt. "Is this?" "Yes," she said softly, "my people. And theirs, buried side by side. Some by choice, some by history." Ethan's chest tightened. "I didn't know." "Most don't," she replied. "The Harpers built their fortune on this land, but when it dried, they left. My grandmother stayed, not because she had to, but because she forgave." Amara brushed her hand across the soil, tracing the names. "Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's planting something where pain once lived." Her words struck him deeper than he expected. He thought about the people he'd left behind, his ex-wife, his brother, his own father, who he hadn't spoken to in years. Maybe he'd been running from his own unburied pain all along. He looked at Amara, her fingers pressing into the earth, as if it could hear her heartbeat. "You believe this land forgives?" She nodded. "It forgives faster than people do." A long silence followed. Then she reached for the shovel leaning against the oak. "There's something else," she said quietly. "My grandmother told me that when someone comes, someone chosen, they'll help me uncover what was left unfinished." Ethan frowned. "Unfinished?" She pointed toward the barn. "There's a place beneath it, but I've never had the courage to open it alone." The barn stood at the far edge of the ranch, half collapsed, but still standing strong against time. As they walked toward it, the air grew colder. Birds scattered from the rafters when they entered. Amara moved toward a trap door near the back. "Here," she whispered. The boards were covered in dust and straw. Together they pulled them aside, revealing an iron ring set into the floor. Ethan hesitated. "You sure about this?" Amara nodded. "Truth doesn't wait forever." With effort they lifted the hatch. A rush of cold air rose from below, carrying the faint scent of earth and candle smoke. Wooden steps led down into the dark. Ethan grabbed the lantern. Each step creaked beneath their feet. The air thickened. When they reached the bottom, the lantern's glow revealed walls covered in carvings, crosses, initials, prayers scratched into the stone. In the center of the room sat a small wooden box, half buried in dirt. Ethan knelt beside it. "What is this?" Amara didn't move. "My grandmother called it the heart of the house. She said it held what needed to be forgiven." Ethan brushed away the dirt and lifted the box onto the lantern's light. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was another journal, older, fragile. The pages were darkened with time. The first line was written in the same elegant hand. "If love survives, let it find its way home." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "It's her writing," she whispered. "The last thing she ever wrote." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then maybe it's time to finish what she started." Amara nodded, wiping her tears. "No, Ethan, we will finish it together." As they climbed back into the daylight, the ranch felt different, lighter, almost breathing again. The wind that brushed against their faces wasn't cold anymore. Something had shifted. The sun hung low in the sky, painting the ranch in shades of amber and gold. Ethan and Amara returned from the hidden cellar, carrying the fragile journal like a secret treasure. Dust clung to their clothes, but neither noticed. They settled at the old wooden table, the lantern casting a warm glow over the pages. Amara's hands trembled as she unwrapped the cloth, revealing words written decades ago by a woman who had loved this land fiercely, despite every loss. "This house is not just timber and nails. It is a memory. It is hope. It is forgiveness waiting to be given." Ethan looked at Amara. She really believed that? Amara nodded, her eyes misty. "Every day. That's why she stayed." She knew the land could heal if someone listened. He ran a finger along the delicate script. "It's beautiful. But why leave it hidden?" "Because truth," Amara said softly, "is dangerous if it falls into the wrong hands. But love. Love is stronger when shared carefully. For hours they read together, the words shaping the air around them. The journal told stories of hardship, of families torn apart, of debts unpaid and lives abandoned. But it also told of hope, small victories, kindness extended, forgiveness granted. Each story was a seed planted in the soil of the ranch, waiting to bloom again. At one point, Ethan paused. "I don't think I've ever read anything that hit this hard before. It makes everything I've worried about feel so small." Amara looked up at him, her eyes steady. "That's the lesson. The land teaches humility. It teaches that even when we feel powerless, we can still care for something bigger than ourselves." A breeze stirred the curtains, and for a moment the ranch seemed alive, whispering, almost singing. Ethan felt a lump in his throat. He had spent years chasing stability, money, independence, but none of it had filled the emptiness he carried inside. Amara's hand found his. "This land. It chose you for a reason. You're not here by accident." His heart raced. "Why me?" "Because someone had to listen," she said simply. "Because someone had to care. And because sometimes love finds its way to those ready to protect it." Tears ran down her cheeks, and without thinking, Ethan pulled her into a quiet embrace. The years of loneliness, of fear, of running from his own pain seemed to melt in that moment. "The work isn't done yet," Amara whispered. Ethan nodded, finally understanding. The ranch wasn't just land. It wasn't just the house. It was a living memory, and it needed caretakers, people willing to nurture, to forgive, to love without expecting anything in return. They spent the evening walking the property together, planting small seeds along the fences, repairing a broken gate, and listening to the wind rustle through the grass. Each action was a promise, to the land, to the past, and to themselves. When night fell, the ranch looked different. Not because it had changed physically, but because they had. The house was no longer a place of shadows or secrets. It was alive, and for the first time Ethan felt that he belonged somewhere, that his life mattered in a way he hadn't felt before. Amara turned to him. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we'll finish what my grandmother started. Together." Ethan smiled. I think I'm ready." She returned his smile, small but radiant, like the first light of dawn after a long storm. And as they stood side by side, looking out over the ranch, the wind whispered through the fields as if carrying the voice of the past, saying, "You listened, you cared, you stayed, and that is enough." For the first time in his life, Ethan felt the weight of history lift. He had come for land, but he found something far greater: purpose, connection, and a home for his heart. The first rays of morning spilled across the ranch, painting the fields in gold and amber. Mist hovered low over the earth, wrapping the land in a quiet, sacred hush. Ethan stood on the porch, breathing deeply, feeling the cool air fill his lungs. Amara joined him, carrying the last of the journals. "It's time," she said softly. "Time to bring everything to light," Ethan nodded. He no longer felt like a visitor. He felt like a part of the land, a guardian of its history, its secrets, and its promise. Together, they carried the journals to the town's courthouse, walking side by side. Each step seemed lighter than the last. The journey that had started with a $1 purchase, with uncertainty and fear, had transformed into something much greater: responsibility, purpose, and connection. Inside the courthouse, they presented the journals and the hidden documents that proved the rightful claims to the ranch. The town listened in silence as Amara recounted the stories of her grandmother, the struggles endured, and the lessons of forgiveness the land had taught. Ethan watched her speak, realizing how courage often comes quietly without fanfare. It comes from staying when everyone else leaves, from facing fear instead of running. And in that moment, he understood that he had been given more than land. He had been given a chance to witness courage, to learn from it, and to act. Weeks passed. The ranch, once forgotten and broken, began to bloom under their care. They repaired fences, planted gardens, and restored the old house to its former glory, all the while preserving the history that made it sacred. Visitors came to hear their story, inspired by the strength and love that had kept the land alive. Ethan and Amara often sat on the porch at dusk, watching the sun sink behind the hills. "It's strange," Ethan said one evening. "I came here thinking I was buying land, but what I found was life." Amara smiled, the reflection of the sunset in her eyes. "The land gives what it knows you need," she said. "Sometimes it tests you first, but if you listen, it rewards you with more than you ever imagined." The ranch became a symbol, not of wealth or ownership, but of endurance, forgiveness, and hope. Neighbors began to visit, drawn not just by the beauty of the land, but by the story of two people who chose to stay, to heal, and to honor the past while building the future. Ethan often thought back to the first day he arrived, the creaking door, the shadows, the fear and uncertainty. How far he had come, how much he had grown. He realized that the $1 ranch hadn't been a bargain. It had been a calling, and answering that calling had changed everything. Amara took his hand. "We're not just caretakers," she said. "We're part of something bigger, and now others can see it too." Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "And we'll make sure it lasts, not just for us, but for everyone who comes after." As night fell, the stars emerged, bright and unwavering. The ranch rested beneath them, alive and whole, a testament to resilience, courage, and the power of human connection. And for Ethan and Amara, it was more than land. It was a home, a promise, a new dawn. So if you've ever thought life's opportunities were gone, if you've ever felt lost or overlooked, remember this story. Sometimes the smallest investment, $1, a choice, a moment, can change your life forever. Stay curious, stay brave, and like Ethan and Amara, find the courage to listen to the land, the past, and the heart. If you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button and don't miss more life-changing, inspiring journeys like this one. Because the world is full of stories waiting to be told, and one of them could change your life too.